I'm going to show you how to get a CakePHP application up and running on a DigitalOcean server. What I'm going to show you perfectly follows along with this tutorial, which I put up on my blog a few weeks ago. So I'm going to copy and paste some of the commands from here. So if you want to follow along, I suggest you go ahead and load this up in a browser. So I'm logged into my DigitalOcean account, and the first thing we need to do is create a new droplet, okay, a server for our application to run on. I already have one set up here which I'm going to use, but all I've done is go to create droplet, and I've chosen to create from a one-click app, and I've selected PHPMyAdmin. I've chosen the smallest server size and put it in London. And you can go ahead and give it a name down here. So I gave mine Cake Demo and hit create. Now I'm not going to do that because I already have mine set up. And then it will take a few minutes and you should be shown your server IP address here. And you should be able to navigate to that address and see a page, which is just the default Apache page, which looks something like this. Now you should also receive an email from DigitalOcean. This is just some basic information about the droplet which you created. Most importantly, it contains your username, which should be root, and kind of more importantly, the password for your droplet, which you're going to need to log in. So now we have our server set up. What we need to do is go ahead and log into our server in terminal with the information that's been sent to us from DigitalOcean right here. So I'm just going to copy my password. So I'm going to select that and Command C and fire up a new terminal window. Okay. And to log into our server, we're going to do SSH root at, and then our droplet's IP address. So for me, that is 178.62.86.172. Okay, and you should see a message like this, which is asking you whether you want to trust this server, which you can just write yes. And then it's going to ask us for our password, which I have copied, so I'm going to do Command V to paste it in. Now you won't see your password here because it's secure text entry, and hit enter. And we should now connect to our server, and the first thing to note here is that it tells us our MySQL password, which is important. We're going to have to come back and use that in a second. But the first thing it's going to ask us to do is actually change the default password from what we just put in to something of our choice. The first thing we have to do is provide that password again. So I'm going to paste it in, hit enter, and now it's going to ask me to choose a new password. So I'm just going to use password, and it'll ask me to confirm that and hit enter. Now, before we go any further, I'm just going to log into my server in an FTP program, so FileZilla, just so we can take a quick look around and see how our server is set up. So I have FileZilla open here, and the host is going to be SFTP, and then the IP address. Our username is going to be root, and the password will be whatever we set our password to be. So mine was password. And I'm going to hit quick connect, and again we're going to see this do you want to trust this host message setup pop up, and we can hit OK, and we should be taken into the root folder, as you can see right here. So right hand side of FileZilla is the files on our server, and the left hand side is our local files. I'm just going to come out of this, so I'm at the very top level of our server, so you can see that's just a slash here, and you could go ahead and put that in here and hit enter, and it would take us all the way up to the top level of our server. Okay. So first off, I'm just going to go and show you the actual public HTML file. So if you remember where our default Apache page was being served up, I'll show you where this file is. So that's in the var directory, then the www directory, HTML. Okay, and this is that HTML file which we're seeing right here. So the next job is to actually set up our server so it's ready to have a Cake installation running on it. So we need to install a couple of extra components on our server in order to run CakePHP, but it's very simple commands, and I'm pretty much going to follow through what I have up here on the blog. So you might want to have this open and copy and paste these commands in. The first thing I'm going to do is fire up a new terminal window, okay, and SSH into my server. So I'm going to put in my password. Okay, perfect. And the first command is this update command, so I'm just going to copy and paste that in. And all these commands, you should just be able to copy and paste. There's only one command where you have to change something, which is just the name of the application which you want to create. Everything else, you should just be able to copy and paste straight in as is. Okay, so that's done. Next up, I need to install the curl library, so I'm just going to paste that in. Okay, and this will ask you if you want to use up the extra space that this requires on your server. So I'm going to hit Y for yes and hit enter, and that will go through and install the curl library. Okie doke, that's done. Next up, we need to install Composer, okay, which is our dependency manager for PHP. So I'm going to copy and paste that command in. Okay, and that should be nice and quick. So a few things we need to do now are enabling the rewrite module. So this line right here. Okay, and you'll notice that the server is now saying to activate the new configurations, we need to run this service Apache2 restart command. So anytime you make any changes to the configuration on the server, you need to restart it, which is what this command does. And you can just paste that in, and basically it will restart the web server. Okay, so that's fine. Next up, we need to install this Intel extension for PHP. So I'm going to paste that in. Perfect. And we're actually at the point where we can install Cake to our server. So I have FileZilla open on my server here, and we looked at earlier that by default our server points to this var www HTML directory. Okay, so we need to be in this directory in our terminal window in order to install Cake to it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is change directory to that directory, which is what this command right here does. So I'm just going to paste that in, and you can see now I'm in that directory. So in my terminal, I'm in the same place that I am in FileZilla. Okay, and we install Cake with Composer. Okay, so we just need this line, and then you'll notice here that you can give your application a name. So I'm going to copy it up to this last bit, paste that in, space, so this is one line, and then give my application a name. Now I'm just going to say booking. Okay, that's going to be the name of my application, and hit enter. Okay, we're going to get a warning saying that we shouldn't really be running Composer commands with our root super user, but it's fine. So we'll get to a point in the install where I'll ask you if you want to set some folder permissions, which we do. So I'm just going to hit Y for yes, which is the default answer, and that's it done. Okay, we've installed Cake to our server. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got here. Now I'm going to refresh this directory, so I'm going to right click and refresh my directory, and you can see that that install script has installed or created a directory called booking. In my case, it will be whatever you called your application. And I can go inside here, and most importantly, Cake expects the server to point to this web root directory. Okay, and at the moment it doesn't. It points right here. Okay, when we saw earlier that we were looking at this index.html file in our browser. Okay, by default, Cake wants it to go to this web root directory. Okay, so we need to go and make a few more changes on our server to set that up. Okay, which is these final two steps down here. Okay, we need to go and edit some server configuration files. Okay, just a couple of very small changes, and the first of which is in this apache2.conf file, which lives in the etc apache2 directory. So I'm going to come up the top here and go right back to the root of my server by just hitting /. Okay, and the directory is that etc directory apache2. Okay, and what you should see in here is this apache2.conf file. Okay, I'm going to refresh that, and I'm going to drag that down, in my case, onto my desktop. Make sure you're somewhere on your system where you know where these files are going. So for me, I'm on my desktop, and it's appeared right here. So I'm going to open this up in a text editor. I'll use brackets, but any text editor is fine. And the line that we want to change is right here on line 166, okay, so in this kind of directory var ww tags. Okay, and we need to change this allow overrides from none to all. Okay, and I'm going to save that with Command S, minimize brackets for a second, and re-upload this file. And FileZilla will make sure that I want to overwrite it, which I do. Just a word of note, make sure you drag it into this directory. Make sure you don't drag it into another folder by mistake. Okay, it needs to go back where it came from. Okay, next up is another file that we need to edit. So we should, for those changes to take effect, we should restart our server, but we'll edit this other file first and then restart it all in one go. Okay, so this next file right here, this default.conf, okay, lives in this directory. So the etc Apache 2 sites enabled directory. Okay, so we're already in the etc Apache 2 directory. So next up, we want to go into this sites enabled directory, okay, and download this default.conf file. Okay, and again, I'm just going to open that up in brackets. And the line that we want to edit is right here on line 12. Okay, and this is where our server is currently pointing. Okay, and we've seen this directory a few times now. It was where that index file was. It's now where our booking directory is for our application. Okay, and we want to tell it to point to that booking/web root directory. So I'm going to do booking/web root here. Make sure you don't put a trailing slash in the end. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to re-upload this to where it came from. So back where it came from, which was the sites enabled directory. And I'm going to overwrite that. Okay, and one last thing, I'm just going to restart my web server. And what we should be able to do now is go and visit our IP address. And what we should see now is the default Cake application page. So we have a clean Cake installation on our server. And you can see that most of the things Cake is telling you is set up and is all working fine. But the one that isn't at the moment is this one. It's saying Cake is not able to connect to our database, which makes complete sense because we haven't gone and created a database yet. So this is the last step to complete our installation and have everything set up and kind of working okay, and then we're ready to kind of develop our application. So we're going to go ahead and go to our server's IP address /phpMyAdmin, okay, and configure a database to use with our application. So our username will be root, okay, and you'll remember that when we logged into our server, okay, all the way up the top, the first thing that it told us was our MySQL root user's password. Okay, so I've scrolled all the way up. You could also fire up a new terminal window and log into your server, and right here, okay, it tells you the MySQL password, okay, and that's what we need to put into the password field for phpMyAdmin. Okay, so in phpMyAdmin, I'm going to go to databases and create a new database. So I'm just going to call mine booking, okay, and create it. And I'm not going to go through this kind of video. I'm going to kind of cover setting up data and stuff. We just need a database for our actual application to connect to. So with that set up, we need to go into FileZilla, okay, and I need to go into my application directory, so my booking, and then in the config folder, there is an app.php file. I'm going to go and I'm going to download this to my desktop. And I'm going to open up in a text editor, so I'll use brackets again. Okay, and the file looks like this, and it stores some basic settings for our application, ranging from things like namespacing through to email protocols, and most importantly, what we're interested in here is the data source section. So this bit right here, so starting on line 232, okay, just some basic information so that our application can go ahead and connect to our database. Okay, so the username is going to be root. The password is going to be that MySQL password, so I'm going to paste it in there. And the database is what we just set up. So in my case, it was called booking. Okay, I'm going to save that. Now the only 3 changes you need, just the credentials for it to connect to the database. And close brackets, and I'm going to re-upload this file back where it came from and overwrite the old one. And with that done, I should be able to go back to that home page of my server, so just my IP address, and hopefully Cake is now telling us that it's able to connect to our database. So we have a clean CakePHP set up all the way from scratch, from starting a server all the way through to installing and configuring basic default CakePHP application.